Welcome into another edition of the JMU Sports News Podcast. I'm Bennett Conlon, joined by Jack Fitzpatrick. And Jack, we're going to dive into the Missouri Valley Football Conference Invitational on this podcast.
I can't wait to dive into that fully because it irks me to my core.
Yeah, I mean, they got, 5 bids, the number 1 seed. Yeah.
It's utterly insane to me that a 4-loss, was it Missouri State?
Missouri State with 3 of them coming in the spring, and 1 was Oklahoma, so I'll give a pass on that.
Coming in the fall.
Yeah, sorry, the fall.
I think what bothers me about that is the FCS could have easily said that fall losses don't count. And then I don't think I would be as upset about it, but it's that they explicitly said they still count. And then,
well, I mean, that's got to. The fall is like the whole reason Jacksonville State has a seed.
It's funny that isn't that funny how that works out? Like, so the games only help because how does Jacksonville State have the 4 seed over Delaware, Weber,
right? It's just so frustrating. We'll dive into it. I think this one's going to have more ranting than a typical podcast, but I think that'll be fun. It's very frustrating, a lot of the results that happened and how it happened. And I mean, do we want to talk Richmond first and ease into it, or do we want to just lose our minds? Well,
yeah, let's talk a little Richmond, because we have to also talk about how they got completely screwed out of a spot, an at-large.
Yeah, that's fair.
Completely screwed. So, of course, they lost to JMU in a game that was I was watching it, and I wasn't really blown away by JMU's offensive abilities. It seemed like it was a relatively close game, and then it just kind of opened up late with that Cole Johnson touchdown run.
Yeah, I mean, look, they're a team that settles for a lot of field goals but plays really good defense, and Cole Johnson didn't make any mistakes. I mean, that's really the big thing, right? The last 2 weeks.
That's what we've said. Well, I mean, that's what we said in the preseason, that if Cole Johnson manages the game, this team is going to win.
And I don't think, double check the William here. I don't think he threw a pick in that game, did he?
I don't think so either.
No, he didn't. So he's gone 2 games in a row without throwing an interception, and shockingly, they've won both games by double digits. Like, that's kind of what we thought would happen, right? If he could take care of the ball. So that's basically what's happening. They're running it. They're not running it that well.
They're not at all. It seems like the passing attack is what moves the ball for them.
I think it's because teams are right. They're pounding everybody up at the line, so they're getting some running. They're not like a yard a carry, right? They're not completely stifled, but it's like 3 to 4 yards for a lot of
theory,
these.
I think they're averaging around 3 yards per carry, and in theory, that's enough to move the chains if you're running it every play and you go for it on 4th downs. Like, it's not terrible, but at the same time, we were expecting them to be averaging 7 yards a carry this season.
Right, and the season stats are super skewed because they beat the living hell out of Morehead State, right? So I think when you look, I was looking at the offense, and I think they're a top 15, maybe even top 10 scoring offense this season, and that's mostly because they dropped 52 against Morehead State and then 36 against Robert Morris. They had the good William & Mary game, but they've had the 2, kind of slow. I would say the offense compared to previous seasons has been less.
It's also, I mean, all this whole season's been weird for JMU, and then just a quick rant on this, and then we'll get back into Richmond. I try to throw out Morehead State and look at like conference only stats when I'm talking about JMU, but then you think of that and it's only 3 games. So that's also skewed. Like, and then you include Robert Morris, but like, it's just, that's 4 games. It's so skewed. But
it's super skewed. I'm glad they got to play Richmond. I'll say that. I think Richmond's a good football team that was very playoff worthy. If it's a normal season, I think the way they were playing would have been a playoff team. So to get that win by double digits gives me a little bit of more confidence about the team.
100%.
And yeah, it was kind of frustrating to see Richmond, who had played pretty well this spring. And I think like Mancuso, I don't think he's bad. I really don't. I mean, he didn't have a great game, but I think that says something about JMU's defense. He was like 9 of 24 for 125 yards. So I thought the defense was great, but I still think Richmond's a solid team. And to see them, they weren't even included in the first 4 out.
A little bit about the game. JMU won 23-6. Just looking at everything quickly, Mancuso threw for 125 yards. Cole threw for 235, but it was a game of defense. I mean, 23-6 kind of makes it seem like it was. At one point, it was 16. It was 16-6, 13. It was a close game where Richmond was within a score, and they just couldn't get anything going. The defense came up big again and again and again. And Mancuso, couldn't get really anything going. It seemed like whenever he tried to kind of get going, the defense would come up with a big sack or they would force a big incompletion. I mean, clearly he was 9 of 24, so there was a lot of incompletions there. But yeah, now to Richmond getting snubbed, they were deserving. Their only loss of the season was a competitive-ish loss to the number 1 team in the country, and you're telling me that drops them from the 12 out of the playoffs completely, and a 4-loss Missouri State team is in? Come on.
That was hard to see. I think they got punished a little bit because they played 4 games, so they don't have much of a body of work, right? They're 3-1, so they only have the 1 loss, but they only have 3 wins. I think that kind of stinks for them because it's not really their fault. Like the CAA didn't have that many games scheduled. I don't think they probably didn't even try to schedule non-conference. And then they had some COVID stuff that popped up and made it tough. So I thought they were at least worthy of consideration. I don't know. I mean, yeah, you're telling me the Valley teams are significantly better. I don't really believe that.
Yeah, I just can't get over the fact. I keep coming back to Missouri State, and I know they only had 1 loss in the spring, just like Richmond. But if you're going to tell me that Jacksonville State is a seeded team because of their fall resume, you have to hold that accountable for Missouri State, where they had 3 losses in the fall. And so they had 4 losses coming into this, and you're telling me a 4-loss Missouri Valley team is better than a 1-loss Richmond team whose only loss was against the number 1 team in the country. That just – and I know you can argue, is JMU worthy of the 1 seed? But just on paper, JMU was the 1 seed, and that was their only loss. And you're telling me they're not even in the first 4 out, and Missouri's in the lead. Get out of here. Get out of here.
It's wild. And just to go through it, at least the seeds, it's South Dakota State's the 1, Sam Houston's the 2, JMU's the 3, Jacksonville State got the 4. And there's only the 4 because it's 16 teams this year, and they, shrunk it down for COVID and all that fun stuff. So I have no issue. Here's what I'll say. I have no issue with Delaware winning the conference automatic qualifier.
We should talk about that. JMU and Delaware essentially were co-champions. Let's call it that. I think people got caught up in the verbiage of the announcement. Yes. They were co-champions, but someone had to get the AQ. And it makes sense that Delaware, the team with more wins and played more games, gets the AQ.
They were better. Like, they had a better resume. I thought they were more impressive this spring.
They beat 2 ranked teams, and at the time, they beat a team that was receiving votes.
And they have, like, some blowout wins. Like, I thought they were good. They only played –
blew out Maine, who was receiving votes.
They played 1 non-conference game, right? So it was 4 conference wins. Yeah. They played really, really well. They were very deserving. JMU fans were like, the conference is against us. It's like, if
this is all political. They're trying to get more teams. That you're telling me this isn't political. They're trying to get Delaware a home game. Meanwhile, 2 weeks ago, Delaware had already put in their bid to be a predetermined playoff site. The AQ didn't matter. Maine also put their name in the hat, and they were not even – they canceled their season.
I also saw some people saying it was more beneficial for the conference to give it to Delaware in terms of maybe Delaware getting a seed, things like that. I think that's true. I don't think that was why they did it. I think Delaware, they won more conference games. They look more impressive doing it. And if the other aspect of it is like trying to help the conference get 2 seeds, why is that a bad thing?
Yeah, exactly.
JMU was clearly getting in. They got in.
I also would say I think if JMU gets the automatic qualifier, there's still the 3 seed.
Yeah, I don't know how much that really affected the thing. And the other thing, let me mention this too, for the committee and why. Okay, well, I guess this goes to the next point. I have no issue with JMU's 3. None.
What I have the issue with is the sneak peek 2 weeks ago telling me that Chase Kitty nailed this one on the head and again in his tweets. JMU is the 3. Well, I'll also say I have a problem with South Dakota State being the 1. I am a undefeated obsessionist. I think if you have a loss on your resume, that should hurt you no matter what your strength of schedule was. But I guess that's the next point we'll dive into. JMU is the 3 seed. They looked shaky against Robert Morris. They looked shaky against Elon. They went on a 4-week shutdown. They then looked solid against William & Mary, and then they looked good against Richmond. That resume doesn't tell you number 1 seed. That resume at 3 is very, very respectable. But, yeah, it's the fact that they gave a 2-week sneak peek ago, and they were number 1, and you're telling me then their 2 best wins of the season come, and then they
I don't think they needed to do this sneak peek. It came 5th inning. of a Kentucky-Mississippi State baseball game that was announced that it would happen like after first pitch, right? There's no warning. The NCAA was like, oh, hey, yeah, this is coming. Maybe they wanted to do it and forgot about it. It seemed like someone who like forgot to turn in their assignment. And they're like, JMU's one, right? They're
It
usually
looked
pretty
like
good.
they took the top 25 and then we're like, let's jumble it. Let's put Jacksonville State. Just do that. Perfect, guys. Let's just turn this in.
And put this out during a baseball game that no one's
We
watching
have
on
2
ESPN.
innings to spare, guys. We did good. Let's finish watching this random SEC baseball game on a Wednesday night on ESPNU.
It was dumb, but I'm fine with them at the 3. Like, I mean, you can go back and forth, but I don't have a huge issue with that because the first 3 games, and they've only played 5, were not impressive. So I don't have much of an issue with that, but it's frustrating the logic that went into it there. It's frustrating that Delaware wasn't considered for a seed. Like, if Delaware and Jacksonville State play, and they have a very legitimate chance of doing so based on how the bracket is set up, I think Delaware will win. I think Delaware's a better football team.
I've been on the Delaware hype train since the beginning of the season, and I've probably annoyed you. And now I'm trying to annoy the rest of the country of FCS fans that Delaware is a good team. They are a dark horse national championship contender.
Yes.
And like they get literally like JMU fans can create this false narrative that there isn't respect on JMU's name. They're clear like, okay, you can create that narrative and Kurt Signetti, if you can use that and motivate the team, good on you. Perfect. But there's been no respect on Delaware all season. You're telling me an undefeated team that at one point was allowing 1.5 points per game and was just dominating the CAA North, which almost national media had declared a top tier like a top tier conference. You're telling me they destroyed everyone they faced in that, and they're not even thought of as a seed. They're not even a top 4 team for the majority of the season. Come on.
And some of it, and this is maybe way too way too detailed, but I feel like the local media in Rhode Island and in Maine, I don't think there's that much of an FCS presence. Stony Brook, there's not really, and I hope I'm not, doing a huge disservice to like local media members there, but there's not like a ton of talk about them. You look at like North Dakota, like the amount of beat writers, the amount of radio hosts that are talking exclusively about like, North Dakota State, South Dakota State, these Valley teams. I think that adds to like this hype that the Valley has all these amazing squads, when in reality, like Maine had a pretty good team this year. Rhode Island had a pretty good team this year. Like for Delaware to go through the teams that went through in the North, Villanova, I still think Villanova's a decent team to go through those teams. Like I think they deserve more respect. I think that division is kind of close to the Valley.
I think the CAA is very close to the Valley. Like someone, and I don't know if it's just because I'm upset over this bracket, but people have been saying like, well, the Valley's won of the last 10 years, 8 of the national championships or something like that. And it's like, no, they haven't. North Dakota State has. Like, show me the last Valley team that was in the national championship not named North Dakota State. I think it was Youngstown State. So I kind of just hurt my own point.
Well, they lost to JMU. So we want to talk about the Valley. Like they were overmatched clearly. JMU murdered the Valley that postseason. That 2016 team probably wasn't even as good as the 2017 team, which the other thing that drives me crazy is the North Dakota State fans were like, JMU fans think they're at our level. The last 4 meetings, they're 2-2 against you. They're a better team this year. You had them in 2018. Like there's a legitimate chance that they meet in the semifinals in Bridgeforth. JMU goes to 3-2 in the last 5 meetings. Like no one's saying that the last decade that JMU's been there. They're saying the last 5 years, they have been a worthy foe. That's what they're saying. And that is very much true.
And it's annoying too, because in the last 5 years, JMU has done very similar things to what North Dakota State has done, yet the CAA gets just disrespected each and every year. And there's that one year they put 6 teams in the field, which may have been a little bit much, but at the same time,
that was high, yeah.
it was a little high, and they all kind of floundered, and that really hurt the national perception of the CAA. But I mean, the Missouri Valley really isn't that much better than the CAA, but just this national, but yeah, I mean, you're competing again. I mean, you have Tech, UVA in Virginia with competing against JMU, William & Mary, and Richmond, trying to get
Right.
space on a newspaper. You're not going to beat Virginia Tech or UVA. You're up in Rhode Island. You're Villanova. I guarantee a basketball story at Villanova in the
Right.
offseason gets more clicks than a football story does. I mean, on Long Island, you're competing with the Yankees, the Mets, the Giants, the Jets. Stony Brook's not cracking the sports page. But in North Dakota, what do you have? North Dakota and North Dakota State.
Right. I think that's what, in like the Twins, maybe. Like,
Maybe if they're okay, if
they're good. Right. So I think that's the thing that kind of stands out is like, maybe I'm reading too much into it, but I think the coverage in terms of what those areas care about, like, and they have good people covering it. I think that's part of it too, is they have people who are consistently covering it and putting out, like, I follow a bunch of the North Dakota State people. And
it's treated like an FBS program.
Yeah.
In terms of media attention, because it's, I mean, I'm not trying to like diminish what they do, but like that's the only sports team they really have within 500 miles.
So, and that's why I guess hockey excitement, but I don't think North Dakota State, do they have a hockky team?
No, but North Dakota does.
Gotcha. So, yeah. So, I mean,
North Dakota State probably does have
I meant like the state professionally, and they don't, right?
Oh, no.
Yes. They do probably have college teams, so that makes sense. Okay. So it's like the Minnesota Wild, right? Would that be the style? It doesn't matter. But did I cut out?
A little bit, but Minnesota Wild.
I was just saying that like that would sort of be what they have in comparison. So I mean that's the number one thing going on. You got a lot of people covering it, so I think it helps build up that Valley prestige. You also, one of the main national people lives in like Minnesota with Sam Herder. Like he covers the Valley more than he, not to dump on Sam Herder, but he covers the Valley more than he covers the CAA and knows more about the Valley than he does the CAA because that's what he's around all the time.
Yeah. Last thing, I guess, and then our I don't know. I kind of want to rant just this whole episode.
We'll keep ranting.
What's your top 4 seeds? I
think I'm okay with South Dakota State at 1, to be honest with you. I know the loss, so if you want to have JMU at 1, whatever. But I have whatever happens, I don't know how JMU's not a top 2 seed. I kind of like something with, I'll keep South Dakota State at 1, whatever. I'll have JMU at 2. I'm going to be honest, I might go like Delaware and then Weber.
Okay.
3-4, something. I really feel high on Delaware. Weber did win on a Hail Mary. So when we look at the undefeated record, it's like, kind of.
Yeah. See, I would go. You
got Sam Houston at 1. You got the boys, the Bearcats.
I got Sam Houston at 1.
I like that.
I'm okay with South Dakota State being ahead of JMU, just because they had more chances to lose, and then they did lose. JMU only played 5 games.
I thought you were an undefeated obsessionist.
I am, but at the same I'm more so at the 1 seed. Like,
got it.
I think there were more deserving teams
to be
up there.
Okay.
I think Sam Houston, South Dakota, Delaware, JMU. I think Delaware's a better team than JMU, and I think that should have been. What?
You got JMU unseeded.
No, I got JMU at 4.
Was that 4?
Sam Houston.
I thought you had Weber. You don't have Weber.
Oh no, Weber.
So
Weber's
Sam
kind
Houston,
of a fraudulent undefeated. I do
Sam
think
Houston,
they should. Yeah.
South Dakota.
Yeah.
Delaware, JMU.
Yeah.
I like that. I think Delaware was very deserving of a seed.
Yeah. Maybe it's just that I was writing the CAA power rankings every single week, and I was obsessing over their points per game at one point, and I was obsessing over just their pure just what's that called when you can do both things equally well?
Balance. Yeah.
Nolan Henderson, all at QB, they have a good rushing attack, and their defense is elite.
They're a good football
You're telling me
team.
that doesn't win you a national championship in the FCS? That wins you. That can win you a national championship.
I like their road, by the way, to the semifinals at the very least. They would have, I forget who they open with.
I think that top bracket with South Dakota State, Holy Cross, Southern Illinois, and Weber is kind of a weak bracket up there.
Not weak. Weber's fairly.
I meant a good bracket. Sorry. I completely said the exact opposite of what I meant. I think mainly because I think Weber and South Dakota, whoever comes out of that, is going to be a tough team to beat in the semis.
Can I say one thing? 16 teams, so much better than 24, Jack.
Yeah, and it creates us to talk about more things here. Here we're arguing about should Richmond get in over Missouri State and all this other. It just lends – I mean, there's more snubs. When you're 24, almost every team that deserves it gets
right.
in. When it's 16, there are teams that deserve it that don't get in.
I think what's interesting, too, is, like, the matchups are cool, and they're cool, like, quicker. like normally in the first round, JMU's got like just an
A
absolute
bye.
pansy, right? They get a bye, and then they probably have another team that's like blah. I think VMI could be somewhat competitive, and we'll talk about that shortly. But I'm just excited about the bracket. I'm excited to watch the other games, which I'm almost never excited to do.
Yeah. I also will say this. I think in a weird way, JMU got the easiest draw. Maybe Delaware got Delaware
I
down
like
there with
Delaware's
Jacksonville
draw a
State.
lot.
I think the 1 and 2 seeds got the harder draws.
Although I think that's a really good point too, because I think that Delaware's draw would be easy until you get South Dakota State, right? I think JMU's draw to the championship, which is probably what you're saying, is pretty decent.
Yeah, I mean yeah. And then for the Sam Houston plays, you got Sam Houston against Monmouth, which Monmouth isn't
Oh,
crazy.
I don't know, man. I like Monmouth. I think they
Okay.
could put a scare into them.
North Dakota State and Eastern Washington.
That's
Like
going to be a
Eastern
sick
Washington
game.
might win that. I
That's going to
wouldn't
be a
be surprised. Yeah.
sick game.
And then from there, I think whoever wins the North Dakota State Eastern Washington game is going to the semis.
I think there's a legitimate chance there. Yeah. I think I won't count out Sam Houston this year because I think North Dakota's down. I think Eastern Washington is down. But also, if I was betting, if they were like the favorite, oh my God, I'm hammering whoever that dog is playing.
I agree with that. I do think it might be because I'm a little shaded. I follow a few Sam Houston beat writers, and they've been hyping up that they're like the defense is good this season, the offense is elite, like it always is. A couple times they had low scoring games where they won.
See, that's promising because normally you watch them and then it's like they did it 63-54. It's like, oh my God, what are they doing?
Yeah. So
do we want to run through and give some quick picks on this thing?
Yeah, let's do a quick pick. Give me your bracket. Just hit me with it. Who do you got coming out of the top?
Hold on, I gotta bring it up. I had it on the NCAA page and it keeps playing like. Which side is the top?
South Dakota.
All right. I think I like what Holy Cross is building. They're not going to win that game. They're like 24-point dogs or something crazy. So South Dakota State wins that. I like Weber State to play South Dakota State. I think South Dakota State's better. Give me South Dakota State in that semi. Delaware, I think, is going to destroy Sacred Heart. Davidson Jacksonville State has me somewhat excited.
Remember when we were trashing on Elon for losing to Davidson?
Well, they ended up winning, right, with the late comeback. Oh, you meant like they were losing by a lot. I think they won the game.
Did they?
I think that was their opening game, and we're like, oh, what nerds.
Oh, okay.
And then they won. But Davidson's legit, even though they're non-scholarship. So I think it'll be Delaware, Jacksonville State. I think Delaware's getting that one. I think it'll be Delaware, South Dakota State. I think Delaware's going to beat them.
I do too.
So I'll go with Delaware on that side. What about you? What do you got?
I'm not to be the same, but I got
Is it
South
exactly
Dakota.
the same?
I mean, that side of the bracket's easy. Southern Illinois, I thought, had canceled their season at one point.
I think Weber State's funny because like I can make a case for them as a seed. I also don't think they're that good.
Yeah, they had a couple close wins. They had the Hail Mary win over, I think, a bad Northern Arizona team. So I mean, they're a weird team. They can catch fire, but they can also just completely poop the bed. South Dakota State is solid. They're, as much as I hate them being the 1 seed, they're a good 1 seed. Delaware is going to destroy Sacred Heart. I think Delaware has a chip on their shoulder. I think Delaware is a top team in the nation. It should have been a top 4 seed. And I think Jacksonville State will feel that wrath. And I think Delaware makes its way to the championship. Over to the right side.
I want to add one more point. I'll make you do the right side first, but I want to say I think it is, and this is no reaction on my end, I think it's a clown show that all of these games are on Saturday.
Yeah, I agree. I didn't.
Why were there not Friday night games? Or Friday night games would be perfect. What the heck is going on in the sports world on a Friday night in April?
Give me 2 Friday night games. Give me a 5 p.m. kick and a.
What else is happening? Baseball? NBA games? It's so frustrating because like Saturday.
It's frustrating because I remember when we were talking about the spring schedule, we were like, and when the playoffs come, there's going to be nothing happening, and it's going to be just pure FCS football, and then it's just not that at all.
Because then the other thing that they did, and I can't remember what exactly. Let me see here, but the quarterfinals next weekend, they do have a Saturday-Sunday flip in the two games Sunday. It's like 7 and 9 o'clock or something, and they're both like ESPN2 or 6 and 9 o'clock.
Okay. Right side of the bracket, I'm going to break down.
You don't care. All right. You go the right side.
I got JMU going to beat VMI. I think that's going to be a close game, but as the fans have let us know in our mentions, the weather is going to play a factor, and we'll dive into that matchup next. But I think JMU wins that. Missouri State, North Dakota. I think North Dakota wins. I don't think Missouri State is that great. North Dakota State, Eastern Washington. I got Eastern
Wow.
Washington. And then I got Sam Houston. I think Sam Houston will take down Eastern Washington. I think JMU will take down North Dakota. And then I think JMU Delaware in the championship. Wouldn't that be funny? Wouldn't that be funny?
That's what I'm hoping for. That's exactly what I'm hoping for. I would go nuts. I think Delaware might beat us. But I will take – I kind of go the same for most of these picks. I feel like everyone has really similar picks. There will be some surprising upsets. But JMU, I think, does get it done. I think North Dakota is a better team than Missouri State. They'll win that one. I really want to take Eastern Washington, but I don't have it in me. Like, I thought North Dakota State would, like, completely flounder this year, and they haven't totally.
I thought they were going to lose to North Dakota. I thought they were going to be a 3-loss team out of the – I didn't think they were making the playoffs.
What I will say is that Eastern Washington can throw the ball. Their quarterback is a stud. So they can score. I like the over in that game. It's at 56 points. I already bet that this week.
North Dakota State also has to travel to Eastern Washington.
Is that game in Eastern Washington?
Yes.
What?
No. Sorry. They do it weird. I forgot.
It's in the dome, right? They just set it up on the thing incorrectly.
Yeah.
Like in the bracket.
Yeah.
Where normally the bottom team is the home team. Idiots.
Sorry about that, folks.
All right. Well, I like North Dakota State. I think in the dome, I'll take them. Although I kind of like that passing attack in a dome. Like that very much. But I'm going to take North Dakota State. I think they'll play Sam Houston. I think North Dakota State's going to eke out a win over Sam Houston. I think it's going to be JMU and North Dakota State in the semis at Bridgeforth. And I think we're going to smack them in the face.
How fun would I hope that happens?
It just stinks because it's like, what is it going to be, like 6,000 people instead of 25?
We might have to plan it. If North Dakota State plays JMU, I might be coming down to Harrisonburg.
Yeah, if we can get in that stadium, I think we might have to try to make it happen.
Yeah. Okay. And then JMU Delaware championship, is that?
Yeah. I think we'll beat them, and I think it'll be a JMU Delaware national championship.
I got Delaware.
I kind of think Delaware.
I'd hope JMU, and I would root my heart out for JMU, but at the same time, like, I don't know. Delaware's really good.
This is a terrible take, but it would be kind of fun in a way. If JMU doesn't win, I'm hoping Delaware does, just for the conference and like building out that rivalry and that stuff. But if they play each other and JMU wins, I still think it helps the rivalry to have a CAA national championship. It would be very cool.
Yeah. I also think, last point on this whole thing about JMU, I guess we'll talk about this coming into the matchup. Let's just talk about the matchup against VMI. JMU opens as 14.5-point favorites. The forecast is looking bad, rainy.
It's looking rainy, Jack, and that's bad for some people. But for people who have to cover UVA baseball on Saturday and could have that game rained out while still watching this game, it's a great forecast.
And it's bad for VMI, too, who gets a majority of their yards through the air. They're not a good rushing attack. They're a very good passing attack.
Yeah, we got to talk about this.
Also, I saw they had the scores broken down by quarter. They're a great first and third quarter team, which to me tells me they have a really good script. And then once you get off script, they're not that good. I think they scored 44 points all season in the second quarter and 46 points all season in the fourth quarter. JMU's been typically a better second half team than they have been first half. So, I mean, it's just a little tidbit, fun thing to chew on. But what do you got? What do you think?
Well, first off, when I see a military team, military institute or academy,
you expect triple option.
Yes, and I had assumed incorrectly all season they were running a triple option, and then I see,
and then you saw they averaged 100 yards rushing a game, and you were like, "Wow, this triple option sucks. How are they 6-1?"
I saw Bill Connolly, who does stuff at ESPN, had tweeted. He does like S&P, I think it's called. That doesn't sound right. That sounds like S&P. Maybe it's SP plus, but whatever he does, it's like an analytical thing. And he's also done it with the FCS a little bit this spring. And he was talking about, he had mentioned that, it's a fun matchup because like JMU stops the run, but VMI is not even going to try to run. And I was like, well, that doesn't sound right. They run a triple option. So then I look up the stats. They're throwing for like 300 yards a game. Can't run the ball. Don't try to run the ball. Have no interest in running the ball. And I was like, that is very unique. And they go up tempo apparently.
Yeah, but here's the thing. I mean, we kind of jokingly brought up the weather, but if it's a rainy, nasty day, like they can't run the ball.
Well, this
It does benefit them that this is a turf field, not like a muddy
right.
grass, icky field. It's going to be interesting to see how they attack through the air when it's a rainy day. And this secondary really hasn't been tested. They faced a third-string Elon quarterback. They faced a second-string William and Mary quarterback. And then the defense just got to Joe Mancuso in terms of just dominating the line of scrimmage. So he went 9 of 24, only threw for 100 yards, and that was probably the best quarterback they faced all season. If this clears up and it's a nice, beautiful day, who knows what happens with the weather within the next couple of days. JMU might have their hands full.
Very good points, especially on the weather. It's Wednesday when we're talking about this forecast.
Yeah.
That stuff can change pretty darn quickly, especially with like the mountains and how all that goes. So we will see what happens there. But yeah, like they can throw it, they can move the ball. Like they're a good team. They also, stupid sports cliches, but they really have nothing to lose. Like this is the first time they've ever been in the playoffs. They're playing well. It's like a historic season. I think they last won the SoCon or something, or their conference in 1980. So like it's a historic season already. And they were talking, I forget the article you sent me, but the quote was basically their coach was like, we get to stay in a hotel and not have to do like military stuff.
He was like, he's like, win or lose, we're going up there and we're having ourselves a time. And it's like, to me, that was kind of weird, just like the way to say like win or lose. Like he has that in his mind. But I understand his sentiment of like, we're just going to go up there and we're going to have fun.
They're going to play free and have fun. The other part that I love about this is normally when you look at these kind of games and you see rain, you're like, this will help the underdog, right? They can slow it down, pull the upset. We're talking about the number 3 seed, number 1 team in the country all season. That's been, or maybe not all season, but most of the season, I think maybe all season. And we're talking about how the rain is going to benefit JMU so that they can just run the ball 40 times and win 13-6.
This might have like the UNI game from last playoff where it was just like foggy, cold, and ugly.
I do not want to watch a repeat of that game. What UNI took until like the fourth quarter to get past the 50.
That was such a terrible game. I remember I was working at Wine Dad's up here in Hoboken, and I was stocking the fridge like the whole game, and I just was like in this cold fridge watching this game on my phone, and I was like, what am I watching right now?
Nothing happened there. Even the Weber State game was kind of like slow, except for the halftime like Hail Mary to Stapleton. But their whole playoff run, they beat the living crap out of Monmouth.
That was their only like big offensive onslaught. But do you think JMU will cover this?
14.5 points. I didn't think they were going to cover against William Mary. I thought they were going to lose.
So did I.
And I also didn't know that they weren't going to have their starting quarterback and their starting running back. But I guess JMU in the same situation. So didn't think
apparently Cole's the starter now.
Oh, Cole is the starter. Cole's the guy.
Like
Gage, they used him in like a wildcat a little bit.
Gage got Wally pipped without ever starting a game.
So Kurt Signetti said that the guys who were honored for senior day have not all technically made up their mind. Yeah, okay. So they honored like 7 of the seniors, but they're going to come back, and the other guys who weren't honored, I assume, would clearly come back. Otherwise, like that's kind of a slight. Why wouldn't you honor them? But like Cole Johnson, my impression of him being honored is that Cole Johnson's not coming back.
Really?
That would be my guess. Now,
okay.
I know that they wouldn't commit to that, but I don't know why you would honor them unless they were very much on the fence or considering it. I think he'll leave, join an NFL team perhaps. No, I'm just kidding. I think he'll leave, and then Gage will have a chance next year, although I fully expect them to bring in the transfer.
I remember that this whole off season back in the summer when we thought they were going to play a fall season. Yeah. I remember I just kept pounding the drum of, I think an FBS transfer is going to start for them. I think, and then
I feel like the pandemic made that a little harder, especially with the uncertainty with FCS. I think this offseason, an FBS kid who goes through spring and realizes he won't play could definitely be like, you know what? Why don't I go try to win a national championship at this level?
Yeah, maybe like a JT Daniels type.
If they can, Sam Howell at North Carolina is a name that.
No, I'm not saying he's coming, but I'm saying
if you can get
hearing the rumblings, kind of like Walker Kessler.
Walker Kessler's going to change his mind and go to JMU basketball. We'll get into that later. But I'm going to say my original point was that I didn't think they would cover against Richmond or William Mary, and they did. I don't really think they'll cover this one, but I don't have a good beat on this team, so I'm going to say that they do cover.
I don't think they're going to cover. I think they're going to win by 14.
You think they're going to win by exactly 14?
That's gonna be my bold prediction of the week.
I wouldn't be surprised either. Give me a score that wouldn't surprise you. Assuming
21-7.
21-7. God, that's that sounds too accurate and also boring.
Or even 24-10.
21-7 does
or
not.
Maybe here's a probably more accurate one. 20-7. They score a touchdown, and JMU's in the red zone twice and settles for field goals.
Yeah, I was going to say,
like in pivotal moments of the game. Like I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if VMI scores the first touchdown. JMU then comes back, drives down the field, gets to the 20, kicks a field goal. Then VMI like has a really good drive, but they throw a pick. And then JMU again drives down the field, gets to the 20, kicks a field goal. And then you go into halftime down 7-6, and you're like, what's happening? And then they score 14 points, and then they win 20-7.
Have you watched this game before? That was really specific.
But can't you see that happening? And like seeing JMU Twitter go up in flames at halftime, being down a point.
I mean, VMI is a good team. Like, I think they could definitely push them a little bit. What I think is interesting is that they had started really slow, and William Mary, they murdered them immediately. Richmond, they came out on fire and then sort of settled in. And by settled in, I mean punted and struggled to score, but they settled in, I guess, and ended up just winning it with defense. So I think they've gotten a little more sense of urgency coming out of the gates, which is good. But yeah, I think VMI could certainly push them. And the one thing that I also think is, you mentioned it, it's a turf field. Like, you can still throw a football in the rain.
Yeah.
Like, it's not impossible. And like at running the ball, you can still fumble it now with it more slippery. So it's not like, oh, VMI is going to have to run every play. Like, just because it's raining doesn't
the only thing is you might see more slips. I think the game will – I mean, I feel like we've said this before every single game, and it's a cliche at this point. But this game is going to be won and lost in the trenches. When JMU was struggling against Robert Morris and Elon, the defensive front seven just wasn't getting pushed, wasn't getting pressure on the quarterback. And now you've seen against William & Mary, and specifically against Richmond, they're getting that push, they're getting pressure on the quarterback, and the quarterbacks are faltering. And I don't think VMI has seen a front seven like JMU's all season. So it depends on how well they can stand up, how well the pressure gets to the quarterback against VMI. And then we'll see if they make mistakes there. We'll see if that hurries kind of timing routes. Because I think the secondary can be picked apart if the VMI – I don't know his name. If the VMI quarterback is left just given time, I think the secondary will easily be picked apart. So this front seven is going to be pivotal.
Also worth noting, they started the season with a senior quarterback, got hurt. Freshman came in. He has been really, really good for them. But also worth noting that like they came into the season with this guy who was experienced and had been playing really well, and now they're down to a freshman. So that certainly hurts VMI a little bit. I imagine there will be some nerves first playoff game for the team. So some pressure on him for sure. Even though they're going to come in free, there's still anxiety and anxiousness that goes with that stuff. And let's talk a little more about VMI, because they have that 6-1 record, but it's not like they've just blown everybody out. Like, they've been tested a few times. They do have one loss. They almost lost another couple other games.
They opened their season with a 1-point win. No, yeah, a 1-point win over, at the time, this was a huge win over number 10 Furman. That's how they opened their season. Fantastic by them. They then went on a run against Western Carolina and Mercer where they just blew them out. Won in OT against Samford, squeaked by Wofford.
Yes, but I like Wofford more.
Okay.
Maybe we could bring that in.
They lost to East Tennessee, and then they pretty handedly beat the Citadel.
They made that one more interesting than it could have been too, though. So it was they go up 14-0 in the first quarter, because you were mentioning
ETSU?
This is this is the last one against Citadel.
Okay.
They went up big time early, and then they kind of struggled a little bit. It got down to 21-17 in the fourth quarter. So and then they ended up scoring there late and finding a way to win. They added, I guess, 10 points in the last. Actually, the recap seems inaccurate based on the box score. So, but it got cut a little bit tighter. Let me see if they actually have the times right. I don't think they do with how they matched it with their box score here. No, they were up 7 throughout. Yeah, it was the third quarter. So they were up 7 going into the fourth quarter. His name is Jerry Rice, which is sick. Yeah. What? These names are incredible. Sorry. Jerry Rice with a field goal, Michael Jackson with a 50-yard touchdown reception.
That can't be real.
This isn't a real team. That's what it says, man. Seth Morgan's the freshman, but they're yeah. I
Chance
mean, they didn't like
Knox,
blow out this
Rashad
team,
Raymond. These names.
Oh, and they got the linebacker whose name is Stone. I love these guys, but they're a good team. They're not like they're not a dominant team. So like
No,
if they beat JMU, it's going to be like a 1-score game.
Yeah. It's going to be JMU making mistakes. JMU will beat itself. If JMU loses, it's going to be because they beat themselves.
Here's my other thing. I understand why they've been so cautious, where they run the ball, they pass it a little bit, they kick their field goals, they play their defense. But God, I need them in the postseason to show
open up
me
that playbook
something.
they've been holding on to.
Find
since
the Donnie Kirkpatrick mattress playbook. No, but I want to see them do more. Remember that one playoff game when they had that like wide receiver pass against New Hampshire when Houston was here that went for a touchdown? And even against William and Mary this year, they faked a field goal for a touchdown. Like, just show me some of that. Show me like a flicker, a reverse, something.
Show me a Harry O'Kelly run. We haven't seen one of the. You would get Bridgeforth rocking if the first punt of the day is a Harry. Like if it's 4th and 2, and just say Harry, have fun.
Or give me the Wildcat with Gage and Latrell Palmer. Pound them in the mouth with something like that. And it doesn't necessarily have to be in this game, right? It's against VMI. But like North Dakota, if they do have North Dakota next, it's not a bad team at all. They've done well in the Valley. And then if you get to the semis where you're playing, probably Monmouth. No, where you're playing, maybe North Dakota State, Eastern Washington, Sam Houston, like
anyone but
something.
Monmouth.
Show me something in that game. That's my take.
Yeah, that's great. So from there, I think we covered football. We got a good rant off. I think quickly we can hit the newest men's basketball transfer.
The newest transfer, Tyree, I'm going to mispronounce his last name, but he is a transfer from North Dakota who he averaged about 9 points, a little under 9 points a game.
8.7.
Yes. He had, 5.7 rebounds, something like that.
A good all-around freshman. I think it needs to be said that he was a freshman, started in 21 games, played in 22, and had some solid stats. Summit
League Freshman of the Year.
Yeah. I mean, 41.7% shooting, 35% from deep, which is pretty solid.
Yeah.
5.6 rebounds per game for a 6'4" guard is really good, and 4.2 assists per game. He's a good all-around player, and he may even slide in at the 1.
He can play point guard.
Like I think he was brought in to be point guard, because as much as we love Votto, sorry,
it's hard, man.
I'll get his name right. His senior season, he's a fantastic scorer, but I don't know if I 100% trust him ball handling it and making the decision. I mean, maybe he has a great offseason, he becomes a great point guard. But from what we saw last year, he was an elite scorer, but not necessarily an elite decision maker. Same with Hodge. I mean, a fantastic elite scorer who can just fill it in from deep. But is he the best necessarily ball handler? And I think they brought in Tyree to be a elite ball distributor.
And now they've got a bunch of guys who can kind of handle it a little bit. I think Falden from Winthrop has a decent handle and can do some things. So they've got multiple point guard options with Strickland too. He's a really good ball handler and defender. So they got options there. They have one scholarship left. Shane Metlin was tweeting yesterday that could be filled today on Wednesday. He said it wouldn't, not a done deal, but he would not be surprised if it was filled the final
Give me
spot.
A forward, please. Give me someone taller than 6'6", please.
Jack, they don't have any forwards. And I know we've talked about this, but good Lord, man, they don't have any big guys.
We've talked about this ad nauseum so many times. We tweet about it, I feel like, every time they announce a new guard transfer. You guys get the picture. I mean, they have one more scholarship left. Their tallest player is Julian Wooden, who's never sniffed the 5, and their 5 is Justin Amadi, who's 6'7". Great players. They can rebound above their height. But I want a tall player. I want a Dwight Wilson. I want a poor man's Cameron Crutwig. Give me a big body in the lane who can just fill space and pull down rebounds and do a weird layup twist thing. Just give me something like that. Just give me someone tall, please. 6'7" or up, please.
That would be massive. The other thing I'll say is that they don't necessarily have to be great this year. Second year of Byington, got a lot of guards. I think they'll be good enough to contend in the league if they can get bigs another year or two down the line. So third year Byington, fourth year, and then build there. That's okay too. I don't want to put too many expectations on this program. Yeah. But at the same time, I mean, they don't have any big guys.
I get what you're saying, and 100%. Yeah, I mean, don't bring in a big guy just to bring in a big guy. Bring in talent, and that's I think
we
what
saw
they're
that
doing.
with Mensa, right, where he came in and wasn't able to contribute at all.
Exactly, and that was just filling up a scholarship. Who knows who they could have gotten instead? My thing is just like, it's just so many guards. Like, even looking at forwards.
The only positive, I guess, is that the newest transfer from North Dakota, like you mentioned, can really rebound for a 6'4" guy. Molson from Seton Hall has some size and can rebound at 6'5". And then Edwards at 6'6" is a good rebounder for his size, and Amadi at least has a good leaping ability. Wooden can rebound. So if they do gain rebounding, but there's also, like, the CAA is not a great league, but they typically have some big bodies that can give you some trouble, and that's my concern.
Yeah, I'm just looking. I mean, that's kind of how Elon battled back into the game. They just couldn't rebound.
Yeah.
And then you look at Hofstra, who has two, Isaac Conti and another freshman from last season who is a solid big man. You look at that, and I imagine Northeastern probably has a 6'10" guy on their roster, and you look at Drexel probably too. Like, it's not an elite team, and at the end of the day, I think Byington understands that, and he knows if we're an elite scoring team, we're probably going to win most of the games. Whereas if we're an elite defensive team, we might be Northeastern and not be that great. So
I'm also excited. I think defensively, the ball pressure's got a chance to be really good. I think they can be active. I think they can run because they literally don't have any big people. So it's easier to run when everyone is 6'4" or 6'3". And they also lost a bunch of 6'3" to 6'5" people. So when they fill in the 6'3", 6'5" guys, it replaces them. It's not quite like, wow, this is only 6'5" guys, because they also have some 6 feet guys. They also go smaller, Jack. They can go even smaller.
I think that's a really good point too about your on-ball pressure, is that they had such active hands last season that they didn't need to rebound because they were getting the ball back in ways that weren't rebounding.
Really good point,
as much as second chance points hurt and are like demoralizing, at the same time, a rebound is essentially a turnover if you think about it in terms like that. And they were averaging like 18 turnovers. They were forcing like 18 turnovers a game, which kind of helped not being able to rebound. And so that'll be interesting to see. And yeah, one more scholarship left. Let's hope they get a guard, but let's just hope they get someone good. I think at the end of the day, you make a great point that try to get transfers that are talented. Don't necessarily you recruit for needs, get I think we're going to start seeing that in college basketball. You recruit for needs, and you recruit transfers to make an immediate impact on your program, and that's through talent.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it unfolds going into future seasons. I also think getting fans back in the building, which should happen next year, can make an impression on recruits. Also, the fact that they don't suck anymore definitely makes an impression on recruits. They're winning a little bit. I think they'll eventually get better. And they're going to get, like I keep talking about, they'll get a guy who is good enough to lead JMU to the tournament and lead Mark Byington to a new job.
Yes. Okay. On that, let's move to Olympic sports in the final. Let's try to get this within an hour. Final 10 minutes of this podcast. We got to hit field hockey, men's soccer, lacrosse, and softball just real quick. I mean, they're all nationally ranked, and they're all doing great. I think we need to start with field hockey. We've been kind of down on them the last couple of years. Not as a mean way, but they've suffered through. I think since we started this podcast, they've suffered through tough seasons. But now it seems like they're an elite defensive team, not the greatest offensive, but when you're such an elite defensive squad, I mean, you don't need to be the best offensive squad. They're number 20 in the nation. Only loss so far was against number 14 UVA.
And it's really hard to score in field hockey. Like the amount of nonsensical rules and like random whistles that the refs blow where they're like, oh, you touched it with your stick. And it's like, that's not allowed. Is just absurd.
You can't touch it with the outside of your stick. You can't bring it up like past hip height.
Yes. There's all these different things that make it really challenging. It's hard to score. I mean, just from watching UVA, like some of those games like are battles and it's like 1-1 or 1-0. So if you can be good defensively, that's absolutely massive. And I was looking, the NCAA tournament format is somewhat comical. Normally it's 16 teams for field hockey, which is just like they rank 20 teams in their top 20 poll. And 4 of those aren't, like you're missing those. Plus you have automatic qualifiers of teams who aren't ranked. So this year, from what I saw, 10
it's
automatic
2 teams and no automatic qualifiers.
Honestly, it's that close. It's 10 automatic qualifiers in 2 at large. Not making the tournament. You got to win that. And if they do, I mean, then we'll see what the matchups are. But then you're one of the final 12 teams in the country, which would be super exciting for them.
Yeah, that's awesome. And now, quick hit on men's soccer. Talk about drama, man.
This was funny because we were both like kind of paying attention, but
Well, it was, I
at
think
like different times.
we dropped the podcast last week on the day of the semifinal,
Yes.
which I don't think we didn't
We were
realize.
not particularly aware of that fact.
And then they all like we finished the podcast. I checked Twitter, and then they're down 1-0. And I was like, we just talked about how TJ Bush allowed one goal all season, and now he just allowed one, and they're probably going to lose. Then JMU fights back. They win that game. And then the championship, they go to PKs. And then I looked at the score. I forgot that in PKs, they take out like the goals like from the actual game, and then they show how many you've scored. So I looked at the game, and I saw JMU 7, Drexel 7, and I was like, holy crap, TJ Bush allowed 7 goals? That's all. But now, number 17 in the country, they're facing UCF in the first round of the NCAA tournament. This is their 15th all-time appearance in the NCAA tournament. They should be a tough out. I think this is probably one of the best men's soccer teams we've seen in a long time because TJ Bush is an elite goalkeeper.
Yeah, and they were, what was it, Ferriel, who they kind of leaned on the last couple of years to be a big-time goal scorer, and they made the Elite Eight run. And it led to that like really horrible day as a JMU fan where like football lost to Colgate, they lost to Michigan State. It was this whole thing. But anyway, they're a really good program. They've gone in the right direction. And you've mentioned it, but I guess what are your thoughts on having a goalkeeper like TJ Bush in a tournament setting? I mean, how valuable can that be?
Well, I mean, when you can look at your goalkeeper and you're like, okay, we only need at most 2 goals today to win, that's huge. Like, and then as an opponent, you're coming into this game and you're like, there's going to be a dogfight to get a goal. So not only do we have to have an elite offensive attack, our defense can't let anything easy through. And it's just added pressure to the other team. And I think it's going to be, I think TJ Bush, Jamie's going to go as far as because a goalkeeper is so important in soccer, but even more so in this case, I think that this team is going to go as far as TJ Bush allows them.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's spot on. And that's kind of what they did in the Elite Eight run, right? They'd score an early goal and then you're like, wow, this defense is good enough to like, that could be enough. So,
which I mean, in soccer, that's really, that's the form that would be, if I was a coach, that's the formula. Let's put on ball pressure. Let's pressure heavily in the first 15, 20 minutes of this match. We're going to get a goal. And then from there, we are going to just clamp down on defense. When we get the ball, we're going to play possession.
I'm excited for him. I have a take that I think they're playing UCF, who won the American Athletic Conference. I think whichever team wins that game, if JMU wins, I think JMU should be invited to the American Athletic Conference.
All right.
Okay. In all sports. So big game for that reason.
Next up, lacrosse.
Well, I feel like this is like an apology podcast because we had like field hockey in the past. We're like, oh, you know, they've lost a step, and then lacrosse, I was like, oh, they're having a down year. Then they go beat a ranked Towson team and crack the top 25. They're not a national title contender in my book. Like the top teams this year are nuts. The NCAA website is trash and was really hard to find if they had altered the NCAA tournament format at all. But I imagine they might need the auto bid to get in there. You would put in our outline, what's the ceiling? For me, it's probably getting in and maybe winning a game, depending on the draw. But
I think they're a good team. I think they show really great flashes, and they have the ability to be really good. But a couple of bad losses this season. I think a bad loss against Elon.
Elon's turned out to be good,
but still.
But it's
JMU's better. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
they should probably have 5-4 too. I think you're expecting a whole lot more. But I was shocked. I kind of ragged on Elon earlier on a newsletter, and it was like, this is a terrible loss, and it's only going to hurt them. And then I think Elon might be right. Or like RPI is really good.
But yeah, so let's just hope they make the tournament. Let's hope they keep this rolling. And not only is it a big win over against a ranked team, it's a big win against a conference opponent, which is, in my opinion, I think it's bigger than just taking down. Like at this point, the way it's setting up, you want a good conference rank so you can go into the CAA tournament in a good spot. And I think picking up a win over a ranked Towson team is huge. And football's number 1. We already talked about football. Softball is number 24. They swept Elon, but here's the story that I haven't seen a lot, mainly because softball doesn't get the coverage it deserves, which is partly our fault considering we're like media itself and we don't really cover it the way it should be covered. So slap on our wrist as well. But Odyssey Alexander's back. It seemed like
Yes.
I think she hasn't pitched for a month, and then she pitched 11 innings in the doubleheader against Elon, allowing I think like 4 runs total or something like that.
Yeah, she's back, which is obviously huge. And yeah, there wasn't a lot. I think Shane Metlin had mentioned maybe injury or something. She was expected her back, and now she's back. Obviously massive. She's the best player on the team, one of the like 50 best players in the country. If you're looking at like Softball America rankings, she can pitch, she can hit. Huge. The fact that they also have Alyssa Humphrey, who has 2 no-hitters, and Odyssey Alexander, I think they're by far the best team in the conference. Although Delaware and Hofstra have good RPIs, that's really frustrating. Their schedule has been not great, JMU, and they've lost out on RPI chances where the last time I checked, they were like 47th, even though the polls have them at about 24.
When do they play? Do they play Delaware or Hofstra?
I don't think they have either on the schedule. Delaware's definitely not. I can't remember if Hofstra snuck on. So it would be in the CAA tournament, which would give them a good chance. But again, like if you win those games, it's not really an RPI boost. It's like just the automatic bid. So those are going to be huge games. They also had beaten George Washington once, but that doubleheader was rained out. If they can get that one back, it'd be huge because GW is a top 40 RPI team. And those would be road games and be massive. Even Longwood, who they play today when we're recording this, is a top 100 team. So if you can get both those in a doubleheader, it boosts you a little bit. So well, we've talked about this, at least I think we both have, with softball being really frustrating because like they're one of the 25 best teams and they get screwed because the conference stinks. Yeah. And this year when the conference doesn't completely stink, they don't play the 2 teams that are decent.
The only time they can play them is in the tournament, and where a loss will only hurt them and a win does nothing.
Yeah, but I appreciate you putting all this in a nice compact thing in the outline because it's kind of wild that they have 5 teams right now that are nationally ranked.
Yeah, it's great for them. And we'll try to hit Olympic sports harder and better than we have all season. I think we just ended up – I'm trying to get back to doing outlines because it keeps us more on task because before we would spend an hour just talking about football, rambling about it. But this keeps us at least somewhat – we can hit Olympic sports and has fun little stuff in it. So anything else you want to add?
No, I'm excited to watch some football this weekend, man. And I think the bracket's exciting.
Yeah, for once since week 1, I'm excited for Saturday. So – for Bennett Conlon, my name's Jack Fitzpatrick. You guys have a wonderful rest of your day. Go Dukes, and the FCS playoffs are here. See ya.